The Road Accident Fund is a public entity that's been put in place for the benefit of victims of road accidents. And with Michael Broglio from Broglio Inc, we've been finding out the ins and outs of exactly how it works when it comes to lodging claims and everything about that. So he joins us again this morning for more insights. Thank you and welcome back to you.
Thanks for having me again.
Now, today you have a case for us that took place in 2007 but only went to court in 2008. And I know that you told us about the law that changed. Now, how exactly does that apply legally to this?
Basically, on 1 August 2008, a new law came into being. But it affects you depending on when your accident took place. So if your accident took place in 2007, the new law on 1 August 2008 didn't change it. It would only be for people who have an accident after 1 August 2008.
Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, you have a hawker who was run over by a minibus. And tell me exactly about the more details on the case.
Yeah, well, basically, I mean, he's selling fruit on the side of the road, and a minibus went over his foot. It led to the amputation of his foot, and that pretty much put him in a position where he couldn't work anymore. He didn't have a formal education. He wasn't able to go and get a secretarial or administrative job. He knew selling. He was successful at that. And so we had to prove that case and say he was a hawker. He would have been a hawker all his life. He could no longer hawk because of his amputation. And as a result of that, go and try and establish what income he was earning, which is quite hard because obviously he didn't keep formal records, but we led evidence in that regard, and then calculate it actuarially to work out what would his loss have been over the rest of his career. And ultimately we settled that case, for example, for 1.4 million.
Now that sounds like quite a hefty amount.
It can be, but I think it depends entirely on the circumstances. For some cases, that could be a small amount. It depends on what the circumstances are. In a case like that, where we really had no documentary proof as to the loss of earnings, I thought it was an excellent result.
So in this case, the victim was a hawker, and I think one would probably presume that they wouldn't be able to afford legal fees. Is it an expensive process?
It is. I think anything involving lawyers is expensive. Lawyers have huge overheads. That's our justification for our fees. But either way, as you know, we are expensive. But the Contingency Fees Act comes to the rescue in cases like this, which allows lawyers to take on a case on a no success, no fee basis. If you're not successful, there'll be no fee. If you are successful, there'll essentially be a reward fee. And that allows an attorney to take on the case, cover all of the expenses, which are considerable, at least 50,000 Rand a case, if not more, in terms of experts and advocates and everyone else that you have to pay and fund to prove it. And that is how we do a case like this. So the client doesn't have to fund it as it goes along. And yes, it is expensive. And yes, we do charge a lot of money, but it's in terms of the Contingency Fees Act.
Now tell me about the difference between road accident fund claims and personal injury claims.
I don't think there's a huge difference, and other people might say that there is, but to a large extent, you're generally on the same principles. Is somebody to blame? Is somebody injured? Sue the person. So instead of suing the road accident fund in a personal injury case, you may be suing the shopping center where you fell. You may be suing the hospital that performed an operation on you negligently. But it has the same sort of principles. In other words, you're not to blame. Something happens to you, you get injured, you suffer consequences, and you sue a body. In personal injury matters is more complex because we've got to work out who to sue in the first place, whereas in a motor accident, we know automatically it's the road accident fund.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
So you can catch more details on our website. Michael will be joining us again next week, but do stay tuned on eXpresso.
Stay with eXpresso and SABC3.